Hello everyone, my name is Pastor Roland, and I'm here to just briefly tell you why I'm here. I am here to answer prayer requests. But the main thing that I do is make you aware that you're not living properly. If you're getting upset at things or at people, if you're resentful, if you're angry, if you're impatient, if you're irritable, okay? If people get on your nerves, upset you, if you judge them, okay? Then you're not living properly. If you're lost in a brain fog, if you find yourself making mistakes and not even and wondering why you try to do right and yet nothing turns out right, something is wrong. You need to find out what it is. The best way you can find out what it is to come back to the present, to mindfulness. See, the mindfulness, the idea of mindfulness is a very, very good idea. It's an excellent idea. I'm all in favor of it. It's what my meditation helps you to do, to become mindful, conscious, aware. The only thing is that it has to include God. It has to include God. See? And that's why the attitude your attitude is important. Let's say that a person comes out of their thinking where we get lost in thinking, worrying, planning, scheming, not living in the present. So we come back. So the person comes back to the present. Okay? But then in the present, the person becomes aware of the fact that they are resentful towards someone. Okay? Well, that resentment is not good. In fact, it's wrong. It's a little bit of hatred, judgment. Okay? Or the person becomes aware that they're impatient with their kids. Impatient. Okay? Or you become aware of the fact that you resented your mom. See? Or you resented your dad. Or you resent your partner. See? Or you become aware of the fact that you're selfish. Or you're phony. Or you're dishonest with people. You don't really tell them the truth. You don't want to rock the boat. You're a little bit phony with them because you want them to be phony with you. You don't want them to pull the rug out from under you, expose you, so you're... See? If you become aware of that, if you're really, really, really aware of it, then what possible response could there be with those things that I mentioned to those things? Then to be sorry, to regret what you see about yourself. See, and if you're very, very aware, then you also are aware of the fact that you can't change yourself. You can't make yourself right. You've always tried that. You've tried to look nicer, look prettier, look handsomer, dress better, act nicer, smile more, impress people, get degrees. You've always tried something. See? Or you tried intimidating people with a certain manner, or with words, or something, or with your title. See? You always hid behind your title, your uniform, your clothes, your position. Something. You hid behind it. You gave people shallow answers. And see? So if you become aware of any of those things that I mentioned, and especially the resentment part, resenting other people, it's very sneaky way of secretly judging others. On the surface, pretending that you don't see their faults and yet secretly judging them. Even your own husband. See, if you become aware of any of these things, the only response you could possibly have that's a correct response would be to regret what you see and to realize that that's the way you are and you can't make yourself. See, you can't change yourself, and yet on the other hand, you don't like being the way you are, but you see that you can't change yourself. That's kind of a helpless regret. Okay? Well, that is the kind of an attitude that God likes. See, He doesn't like you to be a phony. He doesn't like you to be hard-hearted, to be impatient, secretly resentful. See, or to think you can solve all your own problems. So when you see that you don't have the, you see, when you see that you can't make yourself better, it's like crying out to God. Okay, so the very first thing one of the first things you become aware of when you become aware in the present, when you become mindful, if you really become mindful, is your own wrong. And then if you don't try to make yourself right, if your ego doesn't step in to try to save face with excuses or rationale, or try to roll up your sleeves and make yourself right, or blame somebody else, or what do most people do? They escape back into thinking, into fantasy, into planning, scheming, or into study, or into drugs or alcohol. See? They escape into something. The number one thing people like to escape into is fantasy. Back into thinking again, see? Away from the present moment, where there's reality. Okay? It's called conscience. It's also intuition. What you kind of wordlessly know in your heart. That's another word for it is conscience. See, when you do, it says in the Bible, I think it's Paul, he says, be not just hearers of the word, but be doers. See, what does it say? Faith without works is dead. So we all kind of know what's right, don't we? You know in your heart what's right. You've always known. Especially when you were a little child. You were closer to God then. See, but as the years went by and you became resentful and angry toward people, see, then you began to push your carpet under the rug and you didn't want to see that you were wrong. So you didn't like your conscience anymore because it made you feel bad. So you didn't like it. Okay? So you ignored it, found a way not to see what it was trying to tell you in a delicate way. See, or doubted it. Okay? So, coming back to reality, to real mindfulness means to become aware in the light of intuition, in the light of conscience, in God's light of truth, in reality. See, you're thinking and planning and scheming and daydreaming and rehearsing the future and reliving the past. That's a kind of a fantasy, an virtual fantasy world. That you won't find God in thinking. You don't find God in fantasy. You won't find God in imagination. Nor will you find God in study. You find God in the presence, in the present. You find His presence in the present. So but now do you see why people have a hard time remaining in the present? Because they begin to feel the conflict with conscience. See, that's your conflict right now. Your main conflict is with conscience. Your conflict is with God, because you're not living right. His conscience, He is making you delicately aware by your conscience, which now may not even feel like it might be anxiety. You're so far from it. Just anxiety. But He's making you aware. And why is He doing that? Because He wants you to come back. Start living properly. So let's say you came back to reality, you had to see some things. You had to see that you resented your father. See? That you hated your mom. That you hated your brother. That you were phony with, that you betrayed someone. See? Things like that. Well, that's painful. Yes, it is painful to our ego. It's painful. But if you're willing to see those truths, not all at once, but a little at a time, in God's good time, see a little at a time. And if you bear the pain of it without trying to reach for a remedy, without reaching for someone to comfort you, without reaching for a magazine or surfing the internet or for texting, but if you just sit there in reality and bear the pain of seeing the truth about your own self, then just the other side of that is relief. Okay? Is relief. You sense that God forgives you. See? You're sad about what you see about yourself, but you're glad to come clean. Okay? It's such a relief. It's a catharsis. Getting it off your chest quietly in your heart to God. Okay? You might have a tear, sob a little bit. Okay? Or a lot. But then after that brief pain, then comes peace. Peace with God. See, the enmity is over. See, God has never been at enmity with you. He's always been there with delicately, ever so gently, by way of wordless conscience, trying to make you aware, hey, you're being impatient with your child. Hey, you're being phony with that person. Hey, you're judging, hating that person. See? But you didn't want to admit it, so you ran from conscience. Tried to deny your conscience. Tried to prove that it was wrong. That was the enmity between you and God. It was your ego struggling with God. Okay? Then who comes to your defense? Phony friends tell you that you're wonderful when you're not really, even though they know you're not wonderful. They know you're not wonderful. And the devil comes to you in your imagination with excuses and rationale and lies. See, he'll lie to you. He says, oh, God hates you. God is not listening to you. God doesn't care. God has turned away from you. You've committed the unforgivable sin. Blah, 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 blah. It's always the same old, like a broken record. See? Well, all that does is support your ego. And if a person is stubborn enough, see, then they just keep believing those lies. So now what you have to do is separate from the imagination and from those lies and rationale and excuses and all that stuff, and just come back to reality, bear the pain of seeing your own wrong, reconcile with God, and then you know what? Then you have peace with God. And then after that you walk with God. You walk with God. See? Now you're friends with conscience. See how beautiful that is? Well, the meditation helps with that. See, the meditation is just a little technique. That's all it is. So you use the meditation with my recording a few days. Then after that you can do it on your own. Helps you come back to the moment, back to the present, where the birds are singing, and closer to God, reconcile with Him. You have it made in the shade. Okay? Then life will be good. Life will be oh so good and oh so sweet. If you could just reconcile with